Have you ever believed that what you see and touch is the true nature of reality? We often perceive the night sky as a fixed, brilliant dome, and the Earth as a solid center of existence. However, consider a single fine grain of sand slipping through your fingers on a dark beach. If every individual grain represented one stellar sun, then all the collective sand across every desert and coastline of this planet combined would still remain completely insignificant compared to the true number of stars scattered across the deep void. Our basic survival instincts are utterly powerless against the cosmic scale of the universe. Leaving the local safety of the Earth behind, we officially embark on a progressive journey that tears through our sensory illusions, plunging straight into the terrifying heart of the Boötes Void, a colossal ocean of absolute nothingness where reality is executed. The unyielding routine of daily life continuously imprisons human awareness inside a remarkably narrow cage of perception. Throughout a standard mortal existence, a single kilometer represents a tiring walk requiring great physical exertion, while a colossal terrestrial mountain stands as an absolute monument of timeless permanence and an enduring symbol of eternity. Yet, when evaluated from the objective standpoint of the vast cosmos, this deeply ingrained hierarchy completely vanishes. To the overarching universe, the physical structural difference between a tiny crawling ant and the massive peak of Mount Everest is exactly zero. Both entities are merely invisible clusters of atoms residing on a minor planetary sphere drifting in darkness. We spend our brief biological timelines deeply absorbed by immediate terrestrial anxieties, remaining profoundly oblivious to the grand cosmic architecture that surrounds us. This strict limitation in our native awareness occurs because our physical biology evolved exclusively to secure survival on a localized landscape, not to measure the terrifying, silent chasms that separate grand island universes across the dark interstellar ocean. We are currently traveling through a freezing cosmic vacuum on a spinning, floating rock at incredible speeds without even noticing our own motion. To truly comprehend the colossal celestial superstructures that dawn across the distant cosmic horizon, we must first accept a difficult scientific truth. Our native human senses are being constantly and systematically deceived by the fundamental laws of physics. The solid reality we experience through touch and sight is merely a superficial translation constructed by our biological brain to ensure primitive survival. Exploring the deep outer cosmos is not an exercise in collecting dry, irrelevant astronomical statistics. Rather, it is an essential human pursuit to break free from our evolutionary blind spots. By observing the furthest boundaries of space, we uncover the hidden mechanisms that define the behavior of matter, energy, and time itself, allowing us to align our localized intellect with the absolute reality of a dynamic universe. This progressive philosophical exploration will guide our consciousness through three profound scientific mysteries that challenge the very foundation of modern science. We must first investigate where the exact boundary lies between the bizarre, chaotic quantum world and the predictable, solid, classical macro world that we inhabit. Furthermore, we must confront the terrifying enigma of the great cosmic deserts. Why can a massive, seemingly empty territory of space completely swallow all incoming light and isolate entire groups of celestial galaxies? Finally, we are forced to ponder a startling structural parallel. Why does the immense macroscopic architecture of the universal cosmic web strangely, flawlessly, and beautifully coincide with the intricate microscopic neural thought network located inside the human brain? To find these critical answers, let your mind officially release its heavy, terrestrial anchors on the ground. Our collective train of consciousness will now begin its progressive journey from the deepest, most microscopic point of the physical world. Our progressive documentary journey now carries us directly into the hidden architecture of the microscopic world, beginning with the simple act of looking closely at the palm of your own hand. If we look through an infinitely powerful microscope, the familiar smooth texture of human flesh immediately dissolves, revealing a complex network of biological cells. then winding chains of complex organic molecules, and finally, the individual atoms. Here, at this atomic gateway, we directly encounter a profound scientific mystery that has continuously challenged the greatest scientific minds for generations. Where exactly does the fluid, bizarre realm of quantum physics transform into the solid, predictable classical physics of our daily human lives? Have you ever wondered why the floor beneath your feet feels so solid when the atoms that compose it are almost entirely empty space? In this deep, subatomic domain, the solid certainties of normal human intuition are completely erased. Particles do not occupy a single definite position in space. Rather, they exist in a ghostly blur of multiple potential possibilities simultaneously. To understand this highly counterintuitive behavior, we can utilize a helpful everyday comparison, likening a single quantum particle to a highly intoxicated drunkard staggering down an empty city street. Instead of choosing one specific sidewalk, this subatomic drunkard travels in all possible directions at once, spreading out across the landscape in a fluid, wave-like state of multiplicity known as quantum superposition. However, this ghostly freedom cannot endure forever. As our particle travels further outward, it inevitably encounters the outside world, getting continuously bumped into by stray photons of light, drifting atmospheric gas molecules, and ambient heat fields. In modern physics, these relentless environmental interactions act as a form of non-stop subtle observation. The very moment our subatomic drunkard is jostled too much by the surrounding molecular crowd, his fluid, wave-like superposition instantly collapses, forcing him to choose a single, definite, straight path. This is the precise moment when classical physics takes absolute control over our macroscopic reality. This profound physical transformation is governed by a fundamental mechanism known as quantum decoherence. Quantum decoherence explains that a subatomic system cannot remain perfectly isolated from its surroundings. Its delicate quantum information continuously leaks out into the chaotic, macroscopic environment through these endless microscopic collisions. This uncontrollable leakage effectively destroys the fragile wave alignment, forcing the vast ocean of quantum probabilities to crystallize into the rigid, solid macroscopic reality that we can touch, feel, and see around us every single day. This groundbreaking realization helps us understand that solidity is merely a clever macroscopic illusion created by persistent information leakage. For over a century, the exact boundary where this quantum bridge ends and solidity begins remained an elusive puzzle for modern global science. Today, advanced physics experiments have successfully mapped this transition zone at the scale of massive carbon molecules called fullerenes, colloquially known as buckyballs, which are complex, hollow structures composed of exactly 60 carbon atoms linked together. These 60 carbon clusters are enormous giants compared to individual subatomic electrons, yet under highly controlled laboratory conditions, they still exhibit wave-particle duality, passing through multiple pathways simultaneously like a ghost. This specific molecular scale represents the absolute greatest limit where quantum wave properties can actively exist before the sheer size, mass, and structural complexity of the matter trigger unavoidable environmental contact. The moment this threshold is breached, the wave function undergoes rapid decoherence, forcing the matter to collapse into a stable, classical solid state directly before our eyes. Leaving the boundary where matter chooses its state of existence, we dive deep into the ultimate basement of reality. In the historical year 1900, a revolutionary breakthrough shattered the classical foundations of modern physics when the brilliant German physicist Max Planck uncovered a startling secret regarding how nature distributes energy. For centuries, traditional scientists firmly believed that energy flowed in a smooth, unbroken, continuous stream, much like water cascading down a tranquil river. However, through careful mathematical analysis of blackbody radiation anomalies, Planck discovered that energy is actually emitted and absorbed in discrete, microscopic packets. He officially gave these fundamental packages the definitive name quanta. This monumental discovery revealed that reality is not an infinite fluid, but rather a structured mosaic compiled from separate, indivisible units of energy fields. This paradigm shift laid the vital groundwork for quantum mechanics, forcing humanity to completely reevaluate its understanding of the universal fabric. To comprehend this granular structure under a macroscopic lens, we can utilize a helpful everyday comparison involving a modern high-definition mobile phone screen. When you look at your electronic device from a normal viewing distance, the display appears perfectly smooth, fluid, and sleek, showing flawless gradients of color without any visible boundaries or lines. However, if you take a powerful magnifying lens and inspect the screen from an extremely close perspective, the illusion of planetary smoothness immediately vanishes. You begin to see individual pixel squares, which are the tiny, rigid tiles that systematically build the entire digital image before your eyes. Max Planck explicitly suggested that the fundamental fabric of space-time itself operates on this exact structural principle. It looks like seamless silk to our large terrestrial senses, but it is actually a cosmic carpet woven from tiny, indivisible tiles of space and time. This fundamental understanding brings us directly to the concept of the Planck length, which represents the absolute smallest measurement tile allowed by the laws of physics. To appreciate the staggeringly minuscule scale of this ultimate baseline, we can explore a shocking scale revelation that defies standard logic. If a single microscopic hydrogen atom were artificially magnified until it became as large as the entire observable universe, the Planck length inside that massive system would still be incredibly tiny, measuring roughly the vertical height of an ordinary living tree on Earth. This distance is so infinitesimally small that it defines the absolute barrier of physical measurement, a realm where our traditional concepts of distance, location, and geometry cease to possess any meaningful definition or purpose. When we attempt to probe reality below this absolute threshold, the elegant framework of Einsteinian gravity and the fluid structure of space-time completely break down into complete obsolescence. Beyond this point, the smooth geometry of nature fragments into a turbulent, boiling, and highly unpredictable chaotic state that physicists call quantum foam. In this violent realm, virtual particles pop into and out of existence in fractions of a second, tearing apart the very fabric of logic. The smooth, predictable continuum we experience on Earth is replaced by a raging sea of pure potentiality, where the traditional laws of cause and effect completely dissolve into thin air. At this extreme subatomic basement, microscopic particles and energy fluctuations violently fluctuate, causing the very concepts of before and after, or here and there, to completely shatter into non-existence. The Planck length is the definitive ceiling of the micro-world, the final pixel of the cosmos. From these invisible subatomic building blocks that hold the core foundations of reality together, our analytical astronomical spacecraft now slowly turns around, completely shifting its path away from the microscopic abyss and soaring straight up toward the grand macroscopic scale of our nearby planetary system. Leaving the microscopic foundations of reality behind us, our documentary vessel now ascends back into the macroscopic theater of space, introducing a grand perspective that completely shatters the deceptive flatness of our terrestrial night sky. For generations, human beings looked upward at the twinkling celestial canopy and perceived it as a static dome where all cosmic lights existed at a uniform distance. To bridge this profound gap between evolutionary intuition and the staggering architectural depth of the cosmos, we can utilize a helpful real-world structural comparison. Consider for a moment that our supreme star, the Sun, is reduced to the size of an ordinary melon resting quietly in the center of a room. Within this scaled-down model, our entire world, the Earth, is transformed into a minuscule speck of dust hovering a few meters away. As we expand this geometric exercise outward, the freezing dwarf planet Pluto is represented by a solitary grain of sand resting silently on the extreme edge of your local city. This comparative portrait reveals a profound physical truth that standard educational textbooks misrepresent. Our solar system is not a crowded family of planetary bodies clustered together, but rather an immense, hollow ocean of absolute vacuum. The solid matter that builds our worlds represents an extreme structural rarity in a cosmic medium saturated by emptiness. For centuries, the true depth of this local backyard remained unmeasurable because humanity lacked a definitive ruler to gauge the structural chasms of space. The key to unlocking this dimensional mystery came from observing the absolute speed of light. In the historical year 1676, a revolutionary breakthrough occurred through the brilliant insights of the Danish astronomer Ole Romer. While working at the Royal Observatory in Paris, Romer focused his advanced observational instruments on the orbital mechanics of Jupiter and its highly active volcanic satellite, Io. He carefully recorded the precise timings of the regular eclipses that occurred whenever Io slipped behind the colossal shadow of the Jovian giant. Romer noticed a highly perplexing anomaly. When the Earth was closest to Jupiter, the eclipses of Io occurred several minutes earlier than predicted. Conversely, when the Earth moved to the opposite side of the Sun, farthest from Jupiter, the eclipses suffered a corresponding delay. With profound scientific lucidity, Romer concluded that this temporal variation was definitive proof that light does not travel instantaneously. It requires time to traverse the immense distances of the spatial vacuum, moving at a finite velocity measured at exactly 299,792 kilometers per second. This historic realization transformed astronomy into a living archive of the past. Because light possesses a strict speed limit, every celestial image we receive is an ancient message. When we look at the moon, we do not witness it in real time. We see it as it existed 1.3 seconds ago, which is the time required for reflected photons to cross the local void. When sunlight touches your skin on a warm afternoon, those energetic rays left the solar surface exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds earlier. If our parent star were to catastrophically detonate this very second, we would remain completely oblivious to our doom, continuing to enjoy the deceptive warmth of a dead sun for nearly 9 full minutes. We are permanently blind to the absolute present of the cosmos, forever trapped observing a ghostly, layered historical record. Beyond the icy, desolate borders of these familiar rocky planets, our analytical train of consciousness now plunges further outward into the unyielding silence of interstellar space to correct humanity's measurements on a truly grand scale. Banding together the spatial threads of our journey, we officially cross the boundary of our immediate planetary backyard and enter the vast, silent domain of interstellar space. At this monumental scale, the traditional units of measurement used on Earth become completely obsolete, forcing astronomers to rely on the absolute velocity of photons as a cosmic ruler. This reliance effectively transforms the discipline of astronomy into a specialized form of space archaeology, where the pristine, dark night sky functions as an old family photo album. Every time we observe the distant celestial horizon, we are not witnessing the current state of the cosmos, but rather a deeply layered historical record compiled across vast stretches of time. To comprehend this archaeological reality through a familiar lens, we can utilize a clear, real-world comparison. Observing a brilliant star located exactly 10 light-years away from our planetary viewpoint is structurally identical to lurching open a single vintage photo album and looking at a photograph of a close friend, taken precisely one full decade ago. The physical image captures that individual exactly as they existed in that past moment of time. In the intervening years, that specific person has inevitably aged, relocated, or perhaps even ceased to exist entirely. Similarly, the ancient light streams hitting our telescopic instruments today tell us stories of stellar entities as they were, leaving us profoundly detached from their absolute present. This temporal displacement makes the preservation of precise mathematical data an essential requirement for modern cosmology, yet popular public information frequently perpetuates significant historical errors. In many early popular astronomical documents and educational broadcasts, the official distance to Sirius, which is the absolute brightest star shining in our nighttime sky, was mistakenly recorded as a mere 51 billion miles from our planet. From the standpoint of genuine astrophysics, This figure is a massive understatement that completely distorts the true scale of our interstellar neighborhood. Advanced telemetry data verified by global space agencies has officially corrected this long-standing error, establishing that the accurate distance to Sirius is actually 50.6 trillion miles, a staggeringly immense chasm of open space that represents approximately 8.6 light-years of physical separation. This immense depth exposes yet another terrifying layer of deception maintained by our localized visual intuition. When we gaze upward on a clear night, our human eyes instinctively project all incoming light onto a flat, two-dimensional canvas, creating the comforting illusion that stellar families are physically grouped together. Consider the historical context of the famous constellation Orion, the Hunter, which human cultures have used for navigation across consecutive centuries. To our eyes, the iconic stars that form this legendary cosmic pattern, such as the brilliant reddish supergiant Betelgeuse and the intensely powerful blue giant Rigel, appear to occupy the exact same flat geometric plane in deep space. However, precise trigonometric parallax measurements have delivered definitive scientific evidence that completely shatters this visual alignment. While the star Betelgeuse resides relatively close to our solar system, the blue supergiant Rigel is situated hundreds of light-years further behind in the background of the galactic matrix. They are not stellar neighbors sharing a localized cosmic sector. They are entirely separate entities separated from each other by a terrifying, silent abyss of freezing emptiness. The famous constellation is merely a magnificent optical illusion of random three-dimensional alignment, a fleeting visual coincidence born entirely from our specific, isolated vantage point on Earth. Passing through the ghostly, layered shadows of these solitary stars, the hazy band of pale light stretching across our cosmic horizon gradually reveals itself as a colossal, highly defined galactic structure. Our progressive journey now carries us far beyond the cold boundaries of individual stars, steering our analytical vehicle deep into the macro-architecture of our cosmic home. For millennia, humanity assumed that the solar system sat at the absolute center of a privileged cosmic arrangement. The objective truth, however, is far more deeply humbling. Precise astronomical tracking reveals that our Sun and its accompanying planets are positioned within the Orion Arm, a relatively minor and quiet spiral structure located in the remote, hallowed outskirts of the Milky Way. Rather than occupying a central throne of glory, our world drifts in the celestial equivalent of the rural suburbs, far from the blinding stellar density and violent gravitational activity of the galactic core. In the late 18th century, the brilliant musician turned astronomer William Herschel attempted to map this vast, unknown systemic architecture for the first time in human history. By patiently utilizing his self-built reflecting telescopes to count individual stars across hundreds of distinct celestial fields, Herschel meticulously sketched a rough, highly jagged outline of our galaxy. Although his pioneering model mistakenly placed the Sun near the geometric center due to the obscuring effects of interstellar dust lanes, his work provided the first structural proof that we live inside a finite, disc-shaped citizen of space. Yet, even as our physical boundaries began to take clear form, a bitter intellectual debate erupted regarding what lay beyond the perimeter of Herschel's star map. Long before observational technology could resolve the dispute, the profound German philosopher Immanuel Kant looked at the faint, blurry patches of light scattered across the nighttime void and proposed a staggering hypothesis in the year 1755. Kant theorized that these distant nebulae were not nearby clouds of glowing gas, but were completely independent, self-contained systems of stars. He beautifully and elegantly named these external systems island universes. For nearly 2 centuries, the mainstream scientific community widely ridiculed Kant's island universe theory, dismissing it as philosophical fantasy because evolutionary intuition fiercely rejected the concept of multiple cosmic realities. To understand this deep cognitive limitation, we can utilize a helpful real-world comparison. Throughout our early history, humanity behaved like an isolated family living inside a deeply enclosed, completely hidden valley. For consecutive generations, That family firmly believes their narrow valley represents the entirety of existence, remaining totally oblivious to outer reality until they finally climb the highest mountaintop and suddenly witness millions of other brilliant cities shining brightly across an endless continent. This historical mountaintop was officially reached in the landmark year 1929 through the systematic work of the American astronomer Edwin Hubble. Utilizing the massive 100-inch Hooker reflecting telescope situated atop Mount Wilson, Hubble focused his advanced instruments on the distant Andromeda Nebula and isolated a specific type of pulsating star known as a Cepheid variable. By measuring the precise timing of its brightness fluctuations, Hubble mathematically verified that this entity sat at an unthinkable distance, proving conclusively that it existed completely outside the borders of the Milky Way. Kant was right. The universe was composed of endless, separate islands. Advanced modern astronomy and cosmology measure the physical distance to our neighboring Andromeda galaxy at approximately 15 quadrillion miles, an immense chasm that light requires 2.5 million years to cross. The ancient photons captured by our telescopes today originally departed their sources long before the first primitive human beings walked the surface of the Earth, leaving our Milky Way island behind. Our documentary ship now boldly ventures out into the dark intergalactic ocean in search of the invisible framework that governs the entire cosmos. Navigating across the vast intergalactic ocean, our analytical documentary vessel now confronts a revolutionary discovery that fundamentally redefines our understanding of cosmic structure. For generations, traditional human astronomy focused exclusively on the objects that shine, assuming that the luminous stars, glowing nebulae, and radiating galactic cores represented the entire inventory of physical reality. However, advanced modern astrophysics has verified that everything we can see with our eyes and detect with our most sophisticated telescopes is merely a superficial dust layer resting upon a colossal, unseen foundation. To comprehend this hidden framework, we must examine a profound historical detective story that began in the 1930s when the eccentric Swiss-American astronomer Fritz Zwicky observed the distant Coma cluster. Zwicky measured the orbital velocity of individual member galaxies and discovered they were moving far too fast. By all classical calculations, the gravitational pull of the visible matter was completely insufficient to hold the cluster together, meaning it should have violently disintegrated into the dark void. This perplexing spatial paradox remained widely ignored by the scientific mainstream for nearly 4 decades until the 1970s, when the brilliant American astronomer Vera Rubin delivered definitive, unyielding proof of this invisible reality. Rubin systematically mapped the rotation curves of spiral galaxies in deep space by measuring the velocity of stars situated at their outermost edges. According to Newtonian physics, stars located far from the dense galactic center should revolve much slower than those nestled near the core, just as the distant, icy planets in our own solar system crawl slowly around the sunday. Instead, Rubin observed a startling anomaly. Stars at the extreme hallowed edges were tearing through space at the exact same lightning speeds as the stars situated deep inside. The visible matter, including stars, dust, and gas, was missing 90% of the mass required to explain this rapid velocity, confirming that an invisible halo of non-luminous matter completely enshrouds every galaxy. To comprehend this massive, unseeable framework through a familiar terrestrial lens, we can utilize a helpful everyday comparison involving a giant Ferris wheel spinning at a carnival. If this massive amusement ride were driven at an incredibly extreme velocity, the structural bolts would break, causing the passenger seats to snap off and go flying violently away into the surrounding air due to the sheer centrifugal force. However, what if those seats remained perfectly secured, stubbornly refusing to fly off because a giant, completely invisible person was clinging to the wheel, using a phantom grasp to firmly hold every single piece together against the mechanical strain? In this macro comparison, the spinning Ferris wheel represents the rotating galaxy. The individual seats are the stars or separate galaxies, and that invisible giant is dark matter, providing the extra gravitational glue that holds the structural integrity of the entire universe together. This invisible gravitational network does not merely steady single galaxies, it serves as the primary cosmic scaffold that dictates the entire architecture of large-scale reality. This phantom grid actively binds our own Milky Way galaxy to the Virgo cluster, an immense intergalactic metropolis containing over 2,000 individual galaxies tightly locked in a complex gravitational dance. This entire structural congregation forms the core of our local Virgo supercluster, a majestic, highly defined continent of open space spanning a diameter of exactly 100 million light-years. Within this colossal supercluster, dark matter acts as the unyielding cement, weaving invisible web filaments that guide the movement of trillions of suns across immense distances. Shaped by an invisible scaffold, our entire home is silently sliding along a vast, unyielding ocean current of space. In the landmark historical year 2014, a monumental scientific breakthrough in cosmic cartography completely redefined our understanding of large-scale celestial organization. A dedicated team of pioneering astrophysicists led by Brent Tully from the University of Hawaii and Hélène Courtois from the University of Lyon successfully mapped our local universe using a highly specialized tracking technique that measures the specific, non-random, peculiar velocities of distant galaxies. This revolutionary research officially unveiled a colossal cosmic superstructure that enshrouds our entire local galactic sector, an immense structural domain baptized with the beautiful Hawaiian name Laniakea, which elegantly translates into our daily English language as immense heaven or heaven of immeasurable size. This immense cosmic continent spans a staggeringly vast physical diameter of exactly 520 million light-years and comfortably harbors a massive congregation of at least 100,000 individual major galaxies, spinning in the dark vacuum, completely eclipsing all early architectural models of our intergalactic neighborhood and changing our collective planetary perspective forever on our true place in existence. To fully comprehend the dynamic fluid mechanics of this immense superstructure through a familiar terrestrial lens, we can utilize a helpful real-world comparison, likening the entire expanse of Laniakea to a giant river basin situated atop a colossal mountain range. Within an earthly watershed, whenever rainfall descends upon the complex mountain peaks, the individual droplets of water do not remain completely stationary or wander aimlessly at their own leisure. Instead, the surrounding topographical landscape creates a natural drainage network, forcing every single separate droplet to slide smoothly down the internal channels and merge into winding streams that flow continuously toward the same downstream valley region. Laniakea operates on this exact geometric principle, but the unyielding slopes are carved from the invisible geometry of space-time itself, and the primary driving force is not terrestrial gravity pulling water downward, but cosmic gravity marshalling entire island universes along grand structural pathways. Every individual galaxy inside this cosmic watershed behaves exactly like a single solitary drop of water, sliding down an invisible, immense gravitational trough toward a centralized downstream destination known as the absolute heart of the watershed. This profound mapping process has yielded critical scientific evidence that completely realigns our human perspective on our specific location within this grand architectural leaf. For consecutive centuries, our deceptive visual intuition suggested that our immediate family of galaxies occupied a central, prominent station within local space. However, advanced telescopic telemetry has proven that our own Milky Way galaxy resides at the extreme, hallowed outermost edge of the Laniakea Basin, living like a lonely house built on a distant coast. Our local sector is situated directly adjacent to a cosmic watershed divide, an invisible line of gravitational demarcation that marks the definitive boundary separating Laniakea from the neighboring Perseus-Pisces supercluster. At this very precise territorial line, the cosmic topography splits dramatically, while all the galaxies inside our home basin slide toward our localized gravitational core. The vast clusters of matter resting just a few light-years away on the other side of the divide are flowing in an entirely opposite direction, tumbling down a completely separate drainage basin in deep space, swept relentlessly forward along this immense intergalactic network of filaments. Our analytical train of consciousness can now deeply feel the accelerating momentum of this grand cosmic design. As we travel down this path, we observe how galaxies are drawn together by invisible gravitational threads. Downstream by this great gravitational current, we hurtle downstream, where a grand ambush by massive opposing forces is currently underway across the void. Hurtling forward along the invisible celestial channels of Laniakea, our documentary vessel now speeds toward a gravitational anomaly that dictates the path of our entire local galactic neighborhood. Astronomers noticed that the Milky Way and thousands of surrounding systems were not drifting randomly, but were being swept along toward a singular gravitational heart. Modern astrophysics measures our velocity along this path at an incredible 1.4 million miles per hour, pulling our planetary home toward a mysterious destination known as the Great Attractor. This colossal anchor remains hidden from human observers, sitting deeply embedded within a sector called the Zone of Avoidance. Because the thick interstellar gas and dense stellar clouds at the core of our own Milky Way act as an unyielding curtain blocking our path, our instruments remain blind to what structures inhabit this hidden sector, forcing us to rely on radio telemetry to decipher the intense pull. However, as our analytical train of consciousness pushes closer toward this hidden titan, we encounter a baffling structural paradox that completely defies our mechanical understanding of acceleration. Although our local galactic family is racing forward with immense energy, advanced mathematical modeling reveals that we will never successfully reach this destination. To comprehend this impossible race, we can utilize a helpful everyday comparison involving a giant treadmill. Picture yourself running forward at your absolute maximum speed, pouring all your strength into reaching the finish line situated at the far end of the machine. You believe you are making progress, but the mechanical treadmill under your feet is actively running backward at a faster rate, constantly stretching the platform and pushing that final boundary further away from your grasp regardless of your effort. In our dynamic cosmos, that unstoppable backward-moving treadmill is driven by a mysterious force that conquered space-time in the historical year 1998. Prior to this pivotal moment, the scientific community assumed that the collective gravitational attraction of matter was acting as a handbrake, slowing down the cosmic expansion that began with the Big Bang. However, a team of pioneering researchers led by the American astrophysicist Adam Rees completely shattered this assumption by observing specific stellar explosions known as Type 1a supernovae. These rare explosions function as standard cosmic candles because their baseline brightness is entirely predictable. By measuring the light curves arriving from these ancient exploding stars, Rees discovered that the most distant galaxies were not slowing down at all. Instead, they were flying away from us faster and faster every single second, proving that space is actively undergoing an accelerated expansion. This untamed expansion is fueled by an enigmatic entity known as dark energy. Dark energy behaves like a form of negative cosmic pressure that uniformly fills the spatial vacuum, accounting for 68% of the entire universe. While the localized gravity of the Great Attractor struggles to pull things together, dark energy wins the battle on the macro scale, constantly stretching the fabric of space to generate millions of miles of new empty vacuum every consecutive second. This remorseless expansion carries a somber consequence for the far future, as the immense spaces between galactic clusters will eventually expand faster than light itself. Consequently, a day will dawn when the distant islands of light we map today will permanently cross our observable horizon, disappearing from our view into a cold, isolated darkness that no telescope can ever pierce. Ejected from the immediate control of gravity by the relentless tension of dark energy, our progressive thought train now slides completely off the edge of the structure, hurtling through the walls to the extreme limits of nothingness. Banding together the colossal macro structures of the cosmic web, Our progressive documentary journey now crosses a staggering boundary into the frontier of advanced cosmology, where modern observational discoveries are actively forcing a complete rewrite of our fundamental physics textbooks. For consecutive generations, traditional scientists operated under the firm assumption that there was a strict, mathematically calculated ceiling to the maximum size any single structural configuration of matter could achieve. This theoretical limit was completely shattered in the historical year 2025 through the groundbreaking discoveries of the young British astronomer Alexia Lopez from the University of Central Lancashire. While systematically mapping the deep cosmos using light-absorbing signatures from distant quasars, Lopez isolated an absolutely gargantuan chain of galactic filaments woven together across deep space. This newly mapped megastructure was officially baptized as the Quipu structure, named after the intricate system of knotted ropes used by the ancient Inca civilization to record historical records and track complicated statistical accounts across their empire. This colossal cosmic thread stretches across an unthinkable physical length of exactly 1.3 billion light-years, completely defying our traditional understanding of deep space architecture. The sheer existence of the majestic Quipu fiber has effectively triggered a profound crisis in modern theoretical cosmology by delivering a fatal blow to a sacred foundational axiom known as the cosmological principle. The cosmological principle explicitly states that when the universe is viewed on a sufficiently large scale, it must behave as a completely uniform, homogeneous, and isotropic medium. In simpler terms, it dictates that if you look at a large enough sector of outer space, the distribution of matter and energy should be completely smooth, well-mixed, and well-balanced, presenting no unexpected clumps or irregular megastructures. To comprehend how violently the Quipu filament violates this long-standing principle, we can utilize a helpful everyday comparison involving a bowl of blended food. Finding Quipu in space is like scooping a spoonful of smooth soup and suddenly finding a massive chunk of meat filling the entire bowl. It is an anomalous, completely unexpected overconcentration of stellar matter that simply should not exist in a well-mixed cosmic soup, as it permanently disrupts the local structural equilibrium of our planetary models, leaving classical cosmologists completely baffled and deeply confused by its undeniable presence within the dark void. This structural anomaly is backed by rigorous scientific proof that relies on staggering geometric proportions. To translate this 1.3 billion light-year structure into imperial terms, the Quipu fiber spans an absolute distance of approximately 19,400 trillion miles. This scale is so immensely vast that a single photon of light, traveling at the absolute maximum velocity permitted by nature, requires approximately 1/4 of the total age of the entire universe just to cross from one extreme tip of the structure to the other. According to standard inflationary models of the Big Bang, the universe has only existed for 13.8 billion years, a timeline that is mathematically insufficient for standard gravity to slowly herd, collect, and cram so many hundreds of thousands of galaxies into a singular, highly organized linear chain. Therefore, this definitive scientific proof clearly demonstrates that the early universe could not have been a simple, chaotic soup. Instead, it must have possessed incredibly complex, highly ordered matter seeds right from the very dawn of time, operating under the deep mathematical rules we have yet to fully decipher and comprehend. Now, passing far beyond the theoretical ceiling of the Quipu structure, we officially cross the definitive cosmic boundary and plunge straight into the most extreme, terrifying realm of the entire known universe. All sound abruptly falls into absolute silence for 3 seconds. Then, a deep, suffocating sub-bass drone roars, a visceral acoustic frequency that reverberates through the very structure of our progressive vessel, signaling an entry into a realm of hostile environmental extremes. Visually, our trajectory takes us plunging straight through the outermost boundaries of the colossal Quipu galactic cliffs, a territory where filaments of matter suddenly terminate like a shattered coastline. Our vessel is now plummeting helplessly into a vast, pitch-black void, an infinite expanse completely devoid of any local galactic light. As the camera performs a slow, methodical 360-degree rotation to capture our orientation, the monitor reveals absolutely nothing but a dense, suffocating darkness extending uniformly across every single trajectory, offering no horizons to guide our planetary intellect. We are plunging straight into the heart of extreme emptiness. Welcome to the Boötes Void, the great ocean of nothingness, the largest dark desert ever mapped. Within this terrifying sector, the normal rules of cosmic architecture are completely suspended. In a typical sector of space, looking outward reveals a rich, interconnected tapestry of stellar nurseries, shining spiral arms, and brilliant clusters of light. Here, however, the cosmic web has been entirely unraveled, leaving a terrifying bubble of pure spatial isolation that forces us to directly confront the true limits of our physical reality. This extreme isolation introduces a profound scientific paradox that has generated intense debate among global astronomy observers, prompting us to address the audience's core question. We must solve the perplexing question: if an observer is standing at the center of the Boötes Gap, why can't the human eye see any light, while telescopes from Earth can still photograph galaxies within it? To resolve this mystery, we must look past our superficial assumptions about how light operates across great structural distances and examine the strict engineering boundaries that separate biological organs from advanced electronic detectors. For generations, human intuition assumed that light was an absolute presence, meaning that if a star was shining, its rays should be immediately visible to any observer positioned within its line of sight across the vacuum. The rigorous scientific proof that explains this illusion of total blackness relies entirely on the cold mechanics of the inverse square law of radiation and the fundamental properties of photon density. This gap is 330 million light-years wide. If standing at the center, the nearest castaway galaxy is 100 million light-years away from our coordinate space. It is a certified physical fact that ancient photons of light emitted by these isolated internal galaxies, as well as the brilliant superclusters lining the extreme outer margins of the void, are continuously traveling through this empty space at all times. The intergalactic vacuum is not a complete shield against energy. It is actively saturated by ancient, lonely particles of light crisscrossing the dark, yet they remain entirely invisible to our physical senses because of their sparse distribution across the void. However, according to the inverse square law, due to the immense distance, the density of photons, light particles, hitting the human retina per second is extremely sparse. The human eye is a biological machine, not capable of accumulating photons over time like the exposure sensors of telescopes. Therefore, this photon density is completely below the activation threshold of the visual nerve cells. You are surrounded by absolute darkness. Even though the space around you is filled with solitary particles of light, your physical biology becomes a blind prisoner inside a river of unreadable information. This limitation reveals that our biological vision is not designed to explore the deep vacuum. It is an evolutionary tool engineered exclusively to perceive high-frequency light environments under the protection of a thick, planetary atmosphere. When we remove that atmosphere and step into the cosmic void, our eyes completely fail to register the sparse reality of deep space, deceiving us into experiencing an absolute, hollow absence where a rich field of energy is actively passing through the dark. This profound realization completely transforms our traditional understanding of cosmic structure. We used to think of darkness as simply the absence of matter, but here, darkness is a gravitational geometric entity created after billions of years of matter being sucked dry by surrounding superclusters. In the early stages of the universe, this sector possessed a slightly lower density of matter compared to its neighbors. Over eons of time, the unyielding law of gravity turned this minor imbalance into a massive structural divide. The surrounding high-density regions acted like colossal cosmic vacuum cleaners, using their superior gravitational pull to slowly suck matter, gas, and entire strings of galaxies away from this region, pulling them outward toward the dense margins and inflating this massive bubble of absolute nothingness. This mechanical process of gravitational evacuation means that the void is not a passive accident of creation, but a highly sculpted, active structural component of the cosmic web that dictates the large-scale movement of matter across billions of light-years. This terrifying geography recalls the shocking cosmic warning delivered by the American astronomer Greg Aldering, whose words expose the fragile nature of human perspective. If the Milky Way were located at the center of Boötes, humanity would be so isolated that no one would know of the existence of other galaxies until the 1960s. Our intuition of a brilliant universe would be imprisoned in eternal solitude. For consecutive centuries, our primitive telescopes would have encountered nothing but total blackness, cementing a false scientific consensus that our lonely island of light was the only thing that existed in the entire universe. Our baseline understanding of a brilliant, interconnected cosmos would have been completely shattered, demonstrating how easily a minor shift in our cosmic coordinates can utterly break our grasp of reality. This thought experiment forces us to realize that our entire scientific history, including our profound awareness of the expanding universe and our understanding of distant galaxies, is completely dependent on our fortunate planetary placement within a crowded, luminous sector of the galactic web. From the terrifying heart of this grand ocean of shadows, where the very concept of space seems to lose its structural identity, our analytical vessel now prepares to step backward along the timeline of creation to discover how the largest structures first emerged from the ancient, primordial fire. From the terrifying, cold center of the Boötes Void, our progressive documentary narrative now unleashes a dazzling cataclysm of primordial light to X-ray the very origin of space and time. A violent, blinding flash representing the explosive birth of the Big Bang tears directly through the deep Boötes darkness, instantly vaporizing the illusion of eternal stillness. A reversed cosmic timeline rapidly carries our consciousness backward through eons of systemic evolution, compressing galaxies, stars, and atoms back into an ultra-dense, localized initial state. As the visual stream transitions, we observe a simulated model of the cosmic web displayed in perfect parallel alongside a photograph of the biological neural network that forms the intricate structure of human brain cells. Beneath this striking visual juxtaposition, a magnificent, heroic symphonic soundtrack begins to play, its soaring orchestral movements underscoring the deep structural connection, binding the microscopic human mind to the macroscopic framework of the entire cosmos. This dramatic regression back to the absolute dawn of creation allows us to directly confront and resolve a profound question that circulates among global astronomy observers. How large was the universe exactly at the specific milestone of 1/10 of a billionth of a second after the initial moment of the Big Bang? To answer this hallowed chronological puzzle, our standard human intuition must once again be cast aside, as our localized terrestrial experiences cause us to falsely assume that the early universe at this brief moment was merely a tiny, microscopic point smaller than a particle. Advanced quantitative physics demonstrates that this assumption is a massive scientific error. To understand the true structural scale of the cosmos at this specific milestone of 10 to the power of -10 seconds, which physicists officially classify as the electroweak epoch, we must investigate a highly explosive event that occurred just moments prior during the definitive inflation era. The inflation era, which took place at a mind-boggling fraction of time measuring roughly 10 to the power of -36 seconds after creation, was an era where a mysterious, ultra-powerful scalar field stretched the very fabric of space-time. During this brief cosmic flash, the metric space of nature expanded exponentially, ballooning outward trillions of times faster than the absolute speed of light. Because it was empty space itself that was expanding rather than matter particles moving through space, this hyperluminal expansion did not violate the strict speed limit established by Einsteinian relativity. Consequently, by the precise time the cosmos coasted into the 10 to the power of -10 second mark of the electroweak epoch, the universe had already achieved a colossal physical size. Rather than resembling a tiny subatomic speck, The cradle of reality had expanded to a physical volume that was fully equivalent to, or significantly larger than, the total diameter of our modern solar system, representing an absolute structural span of more than 1 full light-year across. This immense, newly generated domain was not an empty vacuum. Instead, it was completely packed to absolute saturation with a superheated, extraordinarily dense primordial soup composed entirely of quark-gluon plasma. At temperatures reaching hundreds of trillions of degrees, the fundamental building blocks of future stars, planets, and biological organisms were completely melted down into a fluid medium of pure, unbridled energy, waiting for the ambient cosmic temperature to cool down enough so that the first stable atomic nuclei could finally crystallize across space. As this primordial plasma cooled and expanded over the subsequent 13.8 billion years, the cosmic landscape slowly organized itself into the majestic architecture that we map with our advanced modern telescopes today. This long-term evolution brings us directly to a startling visual coincidence that has left millions of global observers utterly spellbound. Why does the immense macroscopic architecture of the universal cosmic web look so flawlessly similar to the microscopic neural network located inside our own biological nervous system? When we overlay the digital simulations of galactic distribution across billions of light-years with the intricate cellular tendrils of a human brain, the structural duplication feels almost uncanny. Many popular internet commentators and analytical groups have used this striking likeness to claim that the universe is a living, thinking organism, or that it represents a spiritual design. However, rigorous advanced modern physics firmly dispels these mystical or spiritual interpretations, proving instead that this astonishing structural echo is governed entirely by a universal, mathematically optimized natural law of physics, the absolute optimization of the flow of energy and matter through a dynamic system. Physical forces operating at opposite ends of the cosmic spectrum systematically force matter to distribute itself in a highly defined, networked fractal geometry. This geometric arrangement is not an accident of creation, but represents the most energy-efficient, optimal configuration for information and material transmission within a volatile field, regardless of whether that system is a collection of biological brain cells engaged in deep thought or a vast web of evolving galaxies spanning billions of light-years. This eternal structural blueprint is sculpted by a relentless, dualistic battle that has raged for exactly 13.8 billion years between two supreme forces, the attractive pull of gravity and the repulsive push of dark energy. While the local force of gravity continuously works to herd, collect, and pull ordinary and dark matter together into dense, interconnected linear threads and nodes, the negative cosmic pressure of dark energy constantly works to expand space, driving matter outward to create colossal, isolated spatial cavities like the Boötes Void. This cosmic tug-of-war forces the material universe to crystallize into a self-repeating, fractal network where vast filaments of galaxies border immense oceans of absolute nothingness. Yet, this magnificent realization brings us directly to the absolute limit of modern human knowledge, where our formulas fail. We still do not understand the fundamental particle nature of dark energy, nor can we predict whether this accelerated expansion will ultimately tear the beautiful cosmic web completely apart, leaving our distant descendants to drift helplessly in an absolute, permanently disconnected dark void. As our progressive documentary narrative gracefully approaches its destination, our analytical camera slowly begins its final, majestic descent, panning smoothly away from the gargantuan, glowing filaments of the intergalactic cosmic web and returning all the way back to the familiar, comforting borders of our home world. We travel through the swirling white clouds of our protective atmosphere, gliding gently through a quiet bedroom window and moving directly into the deeply reflective gaze of you, the viewer, sitting quietly in the dark. It is here, within this intimate loop of observation, that our monumental journey officially concludes, leaving us with a final visual memory of the planet Earth as a fragile, faint blue dot suspended entirely alone against an endless, cold, and silent black background of space. Beneath this humbling visual progression, a warm, low-pitched violin solo begins to gently fade away, its melancholic strings growing quieter and quieter until they disappear completely into absolute stillness, leaving our modern minds in a state of profound, peaceful contemplation. This monumental journey across the vast spectrum of scale, from the subatomic basement of the Planck length to the terrifying voids of the deep cosmos, forces us to directly address the fierce intellectual debates that continuously erupt under our community comment sections. We frequently witness a passionate clash of worldviews between the faction advocating for pure, cold physics, governed entirely by mechanistic mathematical equations, and the faction claiming that this magnificent architecture is definitive proof of a supreme, conscious designer. From the objective standpoint of natural philosophy, this division ultimately dissolves into a singular, unified marvel of reality. Whether the fabric of nature operates completely on its own through self-sustaining quantum fields, or whether an absolute, transcendent creative hand set the initial parameters of the cosmos, the unyielding scientific fact remains unchanged. The perfect, hyper-precise fine-tuning of our universal physical constants represents a supreme masterpiece of absolute perfection that is profoundly worthy of our deepest reverence. If the strength of the strong nuclear force or the baseline mass of an electron were altered by even an infinitesimally small fraction, stars would have never ignited, carbon atoms could never have crystallized, and the complex molecular chemistry required to spark biological life would have been permanently executed into non-existence. The very existence of this fine-tuned universe is a staggering miracle that bridges the gap between cold mathematics and sacred poetry. Therefore, we must utilize this profound realization to completely eliminate the heavy weight of existential disillusionment and crisis that frequently paralyzes the human spirit whenever we confront the terrifying, empty vastness of the outer cosmos. It is completely natural for our localized terrestrial minds to feel utterly overwhelmed, hollow, and insignificant when looking at structures like the Boötes Void or the Great Wall of Hercules' Corona Borealis, which make our entire planet look like a meaningless accident of nature. However, we are here to speak directly to you, your mind, and your life, to remind you that while you are undeniably small on the geometric ladder, you are not even remotely insignificant. Your physical body is fundamentally a living, breathing museum designed to store the epic, multi-billion-year history of the entire universe. Every single calcium atom that hardens the structure of your bones, and every single iron atom that colors the red blood cells flowing through your beating heart this very second, was originally forged inside the incandescent, crushing furnaces of massive supernova explosions that died billions of years ago in deep space. We do not stand outside the universe as detached, accidental spectators looking through a cold observation window. We are born directly from its fabric, woven from its elements, and animated by its energy. This deep systemic connection carries an extraordinarily beautiful and concluding philosophical message that stands as the ultimate truth of space science. The absolute fact that a fragile biological being, residing on a minor speck of space dust, drifting through a hostile vacuum, possesses a biological brain weighing only 1.4 kilograms composed entirely of stardust, yet is fully capable of using its localized intelligence to accurately measure cosmic superstructures, situated billions of light-years away, that is arguably the most magnificent, deeply moving phenomenon in the entire history of creation. Sparing our species from meaninglessness, we must recognize that we are fundamentally the universe's own specialized way of opening its physical eyes to look back, observe, and finally understand its own architectural secrets. We are the consciousness of the stars, the voice of the galactic filaments, and the heart of a story that began 13.8 billion years ago. Therefore, when you stand beneath the dark sky, gazing into the stellar ocean and wondering about the final edge of reality, it is actually the stars themselves, operating through the neural networks of your brain, wondering about their own magnificent architecture. This progressive exploration will never arrive at a rigid, closed conclusion. It has only just officially begun within the infinite depths of your own unfolding consciousness.